welcome everyone. You're listening to Gaming Lore for Sleep, where stories from the worlds we love drift into lullabies of memory and myth. Tonight, we descend into the shadowed depths below Piltover, into the city where dreams decay and chaos blooms. This is the story of a girl who fell between the cracks, the girl who would become Jinx. Jinx, the Loose Cannon's Lullaby. Chapter 1, The Fisher. Powder and her protector. Close your eyes. Let the gold and glass of Piltover fade from your mind, that shining city suspended in sunlight, humming with order and invention. Let the light drift away and follow the sound of the world below. Follow the hiss of steam through metal veins, the whisper of gears turning far beneath your feet. Down there, beneath the floating bridges and spotless plazas, lies another city. A city of echoes and shadows. A city that breathes differently, slower, heavier, through pipes that sigh like sleeping beasts. Welcome to Zaun. It's beautiful in its own broken way. The air is thick with the perfume of oil and ozone. The rivers shimmer green and gold under the dim light of chem lamps. You can taste the metal in every breath, and somewhere in the distance, something always hums, a steady, mechanical heartbeat that never stops. This is where dreams are built from scraps. And it is here, in the quiet corners and trembling bridges of Zaun, that the story of a little girl began. Her name was Powder. Powder was small, even for her age, all sharp bones, curious fingers, and wide, searching eyes the color of dawn through fog. She was a creature of motion and wonder, her mind a restless current that never slept. To her, every sound, every spark, every gear turning in the dark was a mystery to be unraveled. She loved the quiet clatter of broken things. Where others saw junk, Powder saw possibilities, the promise of creation. She would sit for hours in the dim glow of a flickering bulb, turning a discarded toy over in her hands, studying the gears inside as if they were secrets written in another language. She made small miracles from nothing. A little clockwork bird that fluttered its tin wings for a heartbeat before falling still, or a pair of cymbal-clashing monkeys that danced until their springs ran dry. Her hands were always streaked with grease, her fingertips scarred with tiny burns. But she smiled through it, because every time she fixed something, the world felt just a little less broken. She was the soft light in the smoke of Zaun, and always beside her, fierce, protective, and impossibly strong, was her sister, Vi. Vi was everything Powder wasn't. Confident, bold, a fighter through and through. Her hair, dyed a defiant pink, was the brightest color in a city that had forgotten what color meant. Her fists, already scarred from countless brawls, carried the weight of every promise she'd ever made. And the fiercest of them all was this: no one touches my sister. They had no parents, only ghosts of memory. The world had taken everything from them, but somehow they still had each other. And that, in Zaun, was enough to keep a heart beating. Their home was a tavern called the Last Drop, a patchwork of warm wood and cold iron, its neon sign flickering like a tired smile. It sat low in the lanes, where the pipes ran loud and the streets never slept. Its owner, Vander, was a man carved from the city itself, broad-shouldered, with eyes like old glass and hands that had done too much fighting and too much forgiving. He once been a legend, a revolutionary, some said, but those days were long gone. Now he tended bar and tended souls, trying to hold the fragile peace between Zaun and Piltover together, with nothing but patience and a rough kind of love. To Vi and Powder, he was family. He'd taken them in when the streets would have swallowed them whole. He taught Vi to fight, to protect. He taught Powder to build, to understand. And when he saw the fear or frustration in their eyes, he'd rest a hand on their shoulders and say, "The world's hard enough, kids. Don't let it make you harder." Powder would nod, pretending to understand. Vi would roll her eyes, but even she would soften just a little. The days in Zaun were never quiet. The air buzzed with movement, with trade, gossip, danger. But in their small world, there were still moments of peace. Vi and her friends, Milo and Clagger, would head out into the maze of pipes and alleys, searching for salvage or scraps to sell. Powder would tag along, clutching her little bag of tools, eager to help, but always one step behind. "Stick close," Vi would call over her shoulder. "I am," Powder would protest, her voice echoing in the tunnels. When they returned home, sweaty and scraped, Vander would be waiting with bowls of something hot and unidentifiable. They'd sit around the cracked table, the smell of engine grease and soup mixing in the air, and for a few stolen hours, they'd laugh. Powder would tinker while Vi teased Milo, and Clagger told terrible jokes. In those moments, Zaun didn't seem so cruel. It was a family, imperfect, but whole. But even down here, shadows had weight. Above them, Piltover gleamed, the city of progress. It rose like a crown of brass and crystal, a place where people lived without fear of the fumes, where the air was clean, and the laws were written in gold. The divide between the two cities was more than physical. It was a wound, and wounds fester. Vi felt it every time she saw a Piltover enforcer swagger across a bridge. Every time someone in the lanes went hungry, while the city above threw away food. Her anger was quiet at first, but it grew. She wanted to do something, anything, to prove that Zaun wasn't powerless. So one night, she made a plan. A heist. They'd climb up to Piltover and take from the people who had taken everything. A warehouse, a laboratory, something valuable. Milo scoffed at the idea, but followed anyway. Clagger, always loyal, agreed. And Powder wanted to help. She wanted her sister to see she could make things right, too. They left under cover of smoke and neon, crossing the bridges where the world split in two. The higher they climbed, the quieter the city became. The air thinned, the lights sharpened. When they broke into the Piltover building, it was like entering another reality. The floors gleamed. The walls were lined with polished brass and humming glass. The room smelled of ozone and invention, clean and alien. Powder moved like someone in a dream. Her fingers brushed strange devices, tools too perfect to have been made by human hands. Then she saw it, a glowing crystal sitting in the center of the room, pulsing with soft, rhythmic light, a heartbeat of blue fire. She reached out. The moment her fingers touched it, the world changed. The light flared, bright enough to burn the edges of her vision. The machines screamed. The air vibrated. And then, Powder, Vi's voice, sharp, terrified, "We have to go." They ran. The alarms rose behind them like a siren's wail. Boots thundered on metal floors. By the time they reached the Undercity again, they were out of breath, their hearts hammering. The heist had failed. Vander was waiting. He didn't need to raise his voice. His disappointment was louder than any shout. "You think you can fight Piltover by stealing," he said. "You're gonna bring them down on all of us." Vi bristled. "We were just trying to help." "I know," Vander sighed. "But some fights don't end where you think they will." He looked at Powder, then, small, wide-eyed, still clutching the crystal that glowed faintly in her bag. "You've got a good heart, kid. Keep it that way." He left them there in the dim light. Vi clenched her fists until her knuckles went white. Powder just stared at the floor. She wanted to speak, to say she could fix it somehow. But no words came. The next day, the peace shattered. Enforcers from Piltover came down to Zaun, armored and cold. They wanted names. They wanted justice. And when they couldn't find the thieves, they took something else instead. They took Vander. He went quietly, hands raised, his voice steady even as his eyes met Vi's. "It'll be all right," he told her. "Keep them safe." But Vi couldn't let it end there. She gathered Milo and Clagger. "We're getting him back," she said. Powder grabbed her bag. "I'm coming too." Vi shook her head. "No, it's too dangerous. But I can help. I made something that can." "You're not ready, Powder," Vi said, softer this time. "Please, stay." Milo scoffed. "Yeah, you'll just jinx it anyway." The word hit like a slap. Powder stood frozen, the light in her eyes dimming. Vi touched her shoulder, trying to smile. "I'll come back for you, I promise." Then she was gone. Powder sat in the quiet. The pipes dripped. The world felt smaller. The word echoed, "Jinx, Jinx, Jinx," until it wasn't just a word anymore, but a heartbeat. She opened her bag. The crystal glowed. Her little monkey toys lay beside it, still and waiting. "I can fix this," she whispered. She soldered. She wired. She worked until her fingers shook. The blue light pulsed, faster now, brighter, alive. When she finished, 3 small bombs grinned up at her, their eyes shining with stolen magic. Her masterpiece, her proof. She ran into the night, down the tunnels, through the smoke, toward her sister. And somewhere far above, Piltover slept beneath its golden lights. But in Zaun, something was about to wake. Chapter 2, The Fracture. The sound of shattering. Powder's hands shook as she clutched her creations. The copper monkeys blinked up at her with cold, electric eyes, the faint hum of hextech energy thrumming through their tiny bodies. For a moment, she could almost hear them whispering, urging her to act, to do something, to fix what had been broken. The city outside pulsed with life and menace. From the twisting lanes and underpasses, the distant clang of metal, the roar of machinery, and the muted cries of those struggling in Zaun's shadows formed a chaotic symphony. Powder had always loved Zaun in its imperfection. The way the streets bent and twisted like veins, the way every corner held a secret, the way light itself seemed to tremble as it filtered through chemical mist. But tonight, the city felt like it was watching her, like it had stilled in anticipation of her next move. She didn't hesitate. She tucked the little monkeys under her arms and sprinted through the labyrinthine alleys, leaping over pipes slick with condensation, ducking under hanging chains, and bracing herself against the occasional gust of toxic wind. Every step was a drumbeat of determination, a desperate rhythm that drove her forward. She had to reach Vi. She had to help. She had to prove that she was not the thing Milo had called her, a Jinx. The sounds of battle grew louder the closer she came to the source. Vi's voice, sharp and furious, cut through the chaos. The heavy thuds of fists connecting with flesh, the metallic groans of machinery under strain, and the deep, guttural roar of Clagger fighting alongside her sister, all blended into a terrible, hypnotic rhythm. Powder pressed forward, small against the immensity of the fight, yet guided by something that felt like instinct. When she burst into the room where the fight was raging, her breath caught in her throat. The scene was apocalyptic. Smoke coiled in curling tendrils beneath fractured beams. Sparks flew from broken wires. And everywhere, the blue glow of Powder's hextech monkeys cast surreal shadows across the wreckage. Vi was cornered, blood streaking her face, fists raised, moving with fluid ferocity. Vander lay pinned under a beam, his limbs trapped, his face pale but determined. Clagger was trying to pull free from the larger of the enforcers, his strength impressive but insufficient. Powder's heart hammered. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but the little creations in her arms seemed to pulse in encouragement. Their tiny mechanical hearts beat in sync with her own. "I can help," she cried, her voice high and urgent, cutting through the roar of the struggle. "I can save you." And then she hurled them into the center of the chaos. The monkeys exploded, not with the sharp crack of a gunshot, but with a strange, singing burst of energy. Blue sparks danced across the walls like lightning caught in slow motion. The air vibrated, thick with ozone and raw hextech power. Time seemed to stretch. The world itself seemed to pause, the noise of the fight suspended in a heartbeat of light. The first thing Powder noticed was the brightness. It was not the harsh, blinding light of a lamp or torch. It was something alien, beautiful, consuming. a cold, radiant blue that seemed to peel at the edges of reality, revealing the world beneath the world. And then came the sound. Not a bang, not a scream, but a tearing, rending shriek that vibrated through bone and sinew alike. A sound that seemed to belong to the city itself, to Zaun, to the universe, as if it were wincing in pain. Powder was lifted from her feet. She flew backward, thrown against a wall, her small body rebounding from the force. The room spun. Dust and chemical mist and sparks mingled in a surreal haze. For a moment, she could see everything at once: the twisted beams, the motionless forms of Milo and Clagger, Vander pinned and bleeding, Vi standing amidst the wreckage, her fists still clenched, and herself, small and trembling, with the evidence of her intentions glowing like a heart in her arms. When the light and the sound finally faded, silence fell, absolute, suffocating, terrifying silence. It was a void more complete than darkness, more heavy than air. Powder lay on the cold floor, blinking, trying to make sense of the ruins before her. The room was a skeleton of what it had been. Metal, wood, and crystal lay scattered in jagged shards. Smoke rose in lazy, curling spirals. And there, amid the wreckage, were the broken forms of Milo and Clagger, lifeless and unseeing. Vander lay beneath a splintered beam, every shallow breath a reminder of the fragility of life. Vi emerged from the haze, coughing, the blue sparks clinging to her skin like fragments of a nightmare. Her eyes widened as they took in the scene, the devastation, the silence, the bodies, and finally, Powder. Powder smiling, small and trembling, with soot on her cheeks and blue light flickering from the little monkeys in her hands. A smile that was both hopeful and utterly shattered. "I saved them," she whispered to herself. "I did it. I helped. I'm not a Jinx." But the world did not forgive ignorance. Vi staggered toward her, a storm of grief and fury colliding in her chest. She saw the destruction, the broken friends, Vander bleeding beneath the beam. She saw the source of it all, the sister she had vowed to protect. Her voice, when it came, was small and broken. You are a Jinx." Powder froze. The word struck deeper than any physical blow. Not an insult, a verdict, a sentence, a truth from the one person who had ever been her anchor. Vi turned and walked away, each step heavy with grief and disbelief. Rescue came for her sister moments later, pulling Vi from the rubble, leaving Powder alone amid the ruins. And in that silence, something inside Powder began to fracture. She crawled among the debris, her small hands brushing against broken wood and twisted metal, gathering her monkeys once more. The voices in her head, previously whispers of doubt, now roared, echoing the word Vi had spoken. Jinx, Jinx, Jinx. The world around her no longer made sense. It was a place without warmth, without protection. A place where love could fracture in an instant. Her mind, fragile and brilliant, began to splinter. The small girl named Powder dissolved into pieces, tiny shards of light and shadow. each screaming for recognition, for revenge, for validation. And in the midst of that chaos, one thought remained clear. I will be seen. They will see me. The hextech light in her hands flared once more, brighter, more insistent. It was her only language, her only proof of power. And so, amidst the ruins of Zaun, in the echo of shattered hearts and broken dreams, Powder became something else. She became Jinx. Chapter 3, The Reforging. A new father's poisonous love. The silence of the ruins lingered like smoke. Powder sat amid splintered beams and shards of glass, the bitter tang of chemicals heavy on her tongue. Outside, Zaun's night pulsed with the faint hum of machinery, distant footsteps, and the occasional hiss of venting steam. But inside her small, trembling body, a storm had begun. A storm of grief, confusion, and a deep, unnameable hunger for recognition. She had tried to save them. She had tried to help. And yet, in the single word Vi had spoken, she understood something that would shape her forever. You are a Jinx. Powder pressed her hands over her ears, trying to block out the whispering echoes of that word. But it had already taken root, and no matter how tightly she closed her eyes, no matter how she tried to rebuild the room in her mind as it had been, it would not leave. The world outside moved on, but Powder could not. She wept until no tears remained, small body racked with sobs that came from a place deeper than exhaustion. Each breath was a battle, each heartbeat a drum marking the passing of a world she no longer recognized. And then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, gaunt, and deliberate. He moved like a predator, whose patience had been honed for years. His face bore the scars of cruelty, the etched lines of someone who had survived by being both clever and merciless. One eye glowed with a pale, chemical green light that seemed to see right into Powder's soul. He knelt beside her. You're crying over them, he said softly, voice like smoke curling over fire. But they weren't crying over you. Powder blinked, unsure whether to trust him, whether to run, whether to hate. She knew pain. She had learned it in the look of betrayal in Vi's eyes, in the weight of Vander's body pinned beneath the beam. But there was something in this man's presence that did not demand her tears. He did not rush to comfort her, and that, strangely, made her feel seen. I'm Silco, he said, as though the world had just introduced itself to her. And you are not what they said you are. Not broken, not a Jinx. Something stronger, something extraordinary. He spoke of the betrayal she had endured, of the cowardice he claimed Vander had shown, of Vi's inability to see the truth. He did not soothe her, he validated her rage. He did not erase her pain, he sharpened it into a weapon. They clipped your wings because they feared you, Silco whispered, leaning closer, his green eye catching the faint glow of the hextech crystal still in her pocket. They called you weak. They called you a Jinx. But you are the storm they cannot control. Powder's heart beat faster. His words poured into the cracks of her mind like water filling a hollowed vessel. For the first time, someone had seen her for what she truly was, not a fragile girl, not a child lost in the shadows, but something powerful, terrifying, and magnificent all at once. "Jinx," he said, "that is your name now, not a curse, a truth. Own it, be it." She repeated it softly at first, testing the word. Jinx, Jinx. It rolled off her tongue like fire over ice. It was not Vi's condemnation now. It was something she could clutch, something she could make her own. Silco led her away from the ruins of Zaun, away from the echoing silence of Milo and Clagger's absence, away from the weight of the sister who had turned from her. He took her to a hidden workshop deep beneath the Undercity, a place alive with the hiss of machinery and the pulse of stolen Hextech energy. There, in the shadows, she began to rebuild herself. Her little mechanical monkeys were no longer toys. Their symbols were replaced with tiny explosives, their eyes brighter than ever, their movements more precise and purposeful. Every creation became a statement, every invention a brushstroke in a larger canvas of chaos. She poured into them the love, the betrayal, the longing that had fractured her. All the pieces of Powder's heart that Vi had left behind. Silco taught her to harness her anger, to weaponize her brilliance. Each blast, each carefully crafted device became a message. I exist. I am here. I am not your Jinx. I am Jinx. Her childhood sanctuary, the tinkering, the creation, the play had mutated. It became art with consequences. Fireworks in the sky, yes, but also terror. Each explosion in Piltover, each flash of blue light across Zaun, was both a declaration of independence and a shout into the void of her own loneliness. And yet, in the midst of this new life, the phantoms of her past were never far. Milo and Clagger haunted her workshops, their faces flickering in memory, sometimes whispering, sometimes mocking. Vi's image lingered in every shadow, the sister who had called her a Jinx, who had left, who had become both the betrayal and the anchor she could no longer touch. Silco, however, was constant. His green eye watched, his voice guided, his presence unwavering. He gave her the gift of focus, the clarity of purpose, and the intoxicating comfort of someone who believed in the chaos within her. Under his guidance, Powder, now Jinx, learned not only to survive, but to dominate, to shape Zaun and Piltover alike with the force of her genius and her fury. The little girl who had once built toys to comfort herself now constructed weapons that sang through the city. Rockets, bombs, and traps became her language, her rebellion, her lullaby. She painted her signature face across the walls of Zaun, her manic grin glowing in chemlight, a reminder that she existed, that she had been seen, that she could not be silenced. And somewhere in the depths of her fractured mind, where the echoes of the past and the whispers of Silco intertwined, Jinx found a new kind of love, poisonous, yes, but absolute. She was seen. She was powerful. She was perfect in her chaos. The city of Zaun trembled beneath her hands, and she loved every second of it. Chapter 4: The Echo, the Return of a Ghost. Time in Zaun had a different rhythm now. The city pulsed, breathed, and throbbed with the imprint of Jinx's chaos. Blue sparks from her devices illuminated the alleys in fleeting glows, and every corner seemed to whisper her name. Yet, amidst the destruction, amidst the terror she inspired, there was still a hollow, an echo that lingered in the quiet spaces of her mind. It was a memory, a shadow, a whisper she could neither grasp nor silence. Vi. The streets murmured with rumors of a blue-haired woman, a whirlwind of explosions and paint, a ghost of the child once called Powder. Traders in the lanes spoke of her in hushed tones, both terrified and awed. And far above, in the shining towers of Piltover, the story reached the ears of a familiar figure, the sister she had left behind. Vi had returned. Years of captivity and hardship had shaped her, hardened her, but her heart had never wavered. She had learned to survive, to fight, to endure. And through it all, one thought had sustained her. She would find Powder. She would bring her home. She would try once more to mend the unfixable. The Undercity did not forgive easily. The bridges and tunnels seemed alive with caution, every alleyway a gauntlet. But Vi moved like a storm, her fists ready, her senses honed, following the trail of fires, broken locks, and the unmistakable flash of Jinx's signature blue light. And then, finally, she saw her. Jinx, blue hair streaked with chaos, grin painted on her face, explosives clutched in hands that had once been small and trembling. She was larger than life, a force of nature. And yet, in her eyes, Vi glimpsed Powder, the little girl who had once clung to her side in the dark of Zaun, trusting completely, unconditionally. Powder, Vi cried, her voice raw with emotion, hope and guilt entwined. It's me. It's always been me. I never meant to leave you. For a moment, Jinx's world seemed to collapse. The hard, manic edge, the chaos she had carefully nurtured, it faltered. The girl behind the mask of terror, behind the laughter and explosions, blinked. She saw her sister standing there, unbroken, alive, and reaching for her. But the fortress in her mind did not fall so easily. The phantoms of Milo and Clagger shrieked in her ears, warning her, accusing her. The memory of Vi's rejection, the word Jinx, the betrayal of the night that had fractured everything. All of it surged forward like tidal waves. And then there was Silco's voice, calm, insidious, a whisper in the shadows of her mind. See, she returns only to confuse you, to control you. She cannot accept what you have become. The two sides of her existence collided violently. Powder, the scared little girl, yearning for comfort, and Jinx, the anarchic storm, fully aware of the power she wielded and the chaos she could unleash. Her heartbeat thrummed like a drum, hammering in her ears. Vi stepped closer, tears streaming down her cheeks. Powder, I'm here. I will never leave you again. Come back with me. Jinx's grin returned, sharp and jagged. But this time it was different, darker, more deliberate. "You think you can just walk back into my world?" she asked, voice dripping with manic intensity. "This isn't your world anymore, Vi. This is mine." Vi faltered. I just want my sister." "My sister?" Jinx laughed, the sound cracking like glass. "Powder died the night you called me a Jinx. She's gone. I am something else, something stronger." And stronger she was. In her mind, the phantoms of the past hovered like a council of ghosts, Milo and Clagger, mocking, Vander, distant and absent, Vi, the betrayer. Silco, the father who had raised her, who had seen her true brilliance and called it perfect. He had forged her from pain, and his voice was louder than any plea from the sister who had abandoned her. The confrontation escalated into chaos. Jinx's hands danced over the triggers of her devices. Rockets, grenades, and traps armed themselves in the flickering neon light. Vi's fists glowed with kinetic energy, her gauntlets ready, every muscle coiled with the desire to save the sister she loved. Explosions tore through the abandoned warehouses where they faced each other, each detonation a pulse in the battle of mind and heart. Sparks fell like shooting stars, illuminating the anger, grief, and longing etched into their faces. The city around them became a living echo chamber of their conflict, every shadow stretching, every wall trembling under the impact of their fight. And then Jinx's manic laughter rang out, louder than ever, drowning the city in sound. "You can't save me, Vi. You can't save yourself." Vi's voice cracked. "I don't care about saving me. I want to save you." But the bond that had once been unbreakable was fractured, scattered like shards across the ruins of Zaun. Every attempt at reconciliation, every reach for comfort, every plea was countered by the storm of trauma, rage, and loyalty to Silco that Jinx had cultivated over the years. The night stretched on, and for hours there was no victor, only the echo of what once was, resonating through two shattered hearts. And in the midst of it all, Jinx realized something terrifying. No one could ever anchor her again. Not Vi, not Vander, not even herself. She was untethered, free, and completely, devastatingly alone. Yet in that realization, there was clarity. She could see the world as it truly was, chaotic, unforgiving, and hers to shape. And with a glint of blue fire in her eyes, she understood the next step. She would craft her masterpiece, her ultimate message, a declaration of her existence that no one could ignore. Zaun would tremble. Piltover would watch. And Vi would finally understand the price of calling a girl a Jinx. Chapter 5, The Rocket's Red Glare. A final message. The city lay beneath her like a patchwork of light and shadow. A world that had grown familiar in its chaos, yet terrifying in its enormity. Zaun glimmered with the blue fires of chemical lamps and stray sparks, and beyond, Piltover rose like a crown of gold, its streets polished and orderly, the air above them clean and untouchable. It all seemed so fragile, so delicate, a world that could shatter with the wrong touch. Jinx perched on the edge of her workshop's precipice, the wind tugging at her hair in playful, wild strands. The rockets and bombs she had built over years of careful madness gleamed around her, each one a testament to her genius and her rage. Yet at the center of it all was the ultimate creation, a massive rocket, welded with stolen hextech power, painted in her signature pinks and blues, the tip crowned with a glowing gemstone that pulsed like a heartbeat of vengeance. She could see them. Vi and Caitlin standing at the council chambers in Piltover, faces frozen in horror and disbelief, helpless as the blue fire of Zaun lit the night sky. Jinx felt the pull of the past, the echoes of powder, the whispers of betrayal, the phantom voices of Milo and Clagger, all feeding the storm that raged inside her. Silco's words came back to her like a mantra. You are perfect. You are chaos. You are seen. This was her declaration, her masterpiece, her lullaby for a world that had never understood her. She ran her hands over the controls of the rocket, the smooth metal warm beneath her palms. Every detail had been painstakingly designed. The fuse, the trajectory, the hextech crystal, each part a note in the symphony of destruction she would play. She thought of the girl who had once built toys to comfort herself, the sister who had loved her, and the father who had forged her in fire. And she smiled, not the manic grin the world feared, but a soft, almost peaceful smile, the kind a child might give before falling asleep. The night was silent, save for the hum of the city below and the whisper of wind against steel. Jinx climbed aboard the rocket, sitting astride it like a child on a rocking horse, a conductor preparing to raise her baton. The world was watching, waiting. She thought of Vi, reaching across the chasm of years and misunderstandings, of the sister who had tried and failed to anchor her. She thought of Silco, whose approval had shaped her into something unstoppable. And she thought of Powder, the little girl who had once trembled with fear, who had believed she could fix everything with clever hands and bright eyes. And she realized Powder was gone. She was Jinx now. She pulled the lever. The rocket roared to life beneath her. Flames and light burst into the sky, a tail of pink, blue, and fiery, white streaming behind it like a comet. The ground trembled, windows rattled, and the air vibrated with the force of her creation. The hextech gemstone pulsed in tandem with the rocket's engines, a beating heart of light and fury. And for a single moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Explosions bloomed below like flowers of fire. Structures twisted and groaned. Bridges shuddered. And everywhere, the people of Zaun and Piltover watched in awe and terror, understanding in a single instant that this was no ordinary act of vengeance. This was a message. Jinx's laughter rang out, a melody of joy, pain, and absolute freedom. It was not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was the voice of a girl who had survived, who had been shattered, and who had rebuilt herself in her own image. She had taken the chaos of loss, the betrayal of love, the longing for recognition, and spun it into something unstoppable, something beautiful in its brilliance and devastation. In the control of the rocket, she felt the echoes of every part of her life, the fractures and the reforging, the ghosts and the living, and she felt peace. Not happiness, not reconciliation, but clarity. The world had seen her now. She had been seen in all her chaos and brilliance. The rocket soared higher, past the chimneys of Zaun, past the shining towers of Piltover, and into the night sky. It arced gracefully, a streak of blue and pink, and the gemstone at its nose sent pulses of light across the city, a heartbeat of fire visible for miles. Below, Vi and Caitlin could only watch. Their pleas, their hopes, their attempts at saving the girl they once knew, powerless against the force of Jinx's will. And yet, somewhere in Vi's heart, she understood. She saw Powder in that rocket, in that flight, in that explosion, the child she had loved, now grown into something untamed, undeniable, and eternal. Jinx leaned back, arms spread, hair streaming in the wind. The world trembled beneath her, and she laughed, softly at first, then louder, until the night was full of the sound of her freedom. The rocket reached its apex. The gemstone flared brighter, filling the city with impossible light. And then, slowly, deliberately, it released its final payload, a cascade of hextech fire, explosions, and shimmering sparks that rained down across the cityscape. It was destruction, yes, but it was also art. A symphony of fire and color, a lullaby for the city, a final statement from the girl who had once been called Powder. And when the noise faded, when the flames and sparks settled like falling stars, Jinx looked out over Zaun and Piltover and felt silence. Perfect, serene, absolute. The chaos that had defined her life had reached its crescendo, and in its wake was a stillness she had never known. She had been a child, a sister, a Jinx, a lost soul. She had been rebuilt, reforged, and unleashed. She was Jinx, and in the quiet aftermath, the city whispered her name. The echoes of a fractured soul had finally found their voice. And so ends our journey tonight, dreamers. We've wandered the twisting alleys of Zaun, felt the spark of Powder's brilliance, and watched the chaos that forged Jinx. The streets are quiet now, the echoes of her story fading softly into the night, leaving only the hum of the city and the warmth of memory. Thank you for listening to this tale here on Gaming Lore for Sleep. If you enjoyed drifting through the story with us, we would love for you to subscribe so that every night you can return for more legends, more adventures, and more lullabies for the imagination. Sleep well, dream safely, and let the stories carry you to the quiet corners of your mind where magic, wonder, and mystery always await. Until next time, may your dreams be full of peace and adventure.